The silence of the lambs. The shocking truth about why the powerless man is content with his cage. There are 5 levels of power. 5 rungs on a ladder that most men will never even see, let alone climb. I'm not talking about money, or titles, or how many zeros are in your bank account. I'm talking about authorship, the cold, hard truth of who writes the script for your life. Most men, they die on the first level. Faceless, submissive, obedient. They confuse survival with strength. They mistake the dull, agonizing drumbeat of routine for discipline. They live, they work, they consume, they nod, and they die, all within the brilliant, terrifying architecture of the system that owns them. And the most chilling part? The part that keeps me awake at night, staring at the ceiling? They are content with their cage. Look around you. At the frantic rush-hour traffic. At the identical houses lining the identical streets. At the way everyone clings to the same handful of approved opinions and fears the same prepackaged threats. This is not chaos. This is a symphony. A perfect, invisible system designed not just to control you, but to make you love being controlled. This is level 1, the powerless. You see, the powerless man does not know he is powerless. That is the genius of the entire operation. He thinks his opinions are his own, formed through rational thought and personal experience. He believes the choices he makes, which political party to vote for, which streaming service to subscribe to, which flavor of consumer debt to carry, are meaningful acts of freedom. But they were all calculated. They were granted to him, not out of fairness, but out of a dark, precise calculation. Because a man who thinks he is free will police himself with a vigilance that no tyrant could ever afford. He will live in invisible chains and, astonishingly, he will defend the hands that forged them. He will call his neighbor a fool for seeing the bars, and he will look at you, the seeker, with pity, labeling your ambition a sickness. Why can't you just be happy? They ask. Why can't you just be grateful for what you have? You know those tired cliches they repeat? Because I have to. That's just life. It is what it is. Listen closely. These are not answers. They are chains disguised as wisdom. They are the resignation speech of a man who has surrendered his soul for a guaranteed paycheck and the permission to exist quietly. They wake up. They suffer. They wait for Friday. But ask them to define the purpose of that suffering, the why of that work, and they cannot answer without reciting someone else's script, a script written by the levels above them. This man, the level 1 inhabitant, is not defined by a lack of talent. He might be intelligent, capable, even charismatic, but he is ultimately defined by submission. He waits for instructions. He looks for approval. He fears being alone in thought because true, independent thought is the ultimate act of treason against the crowd. If he thinks for himself, he risks exile, ridicule, and worst of all for him, the responsibility for his own outcomes. So he keeps quiet. He laughs when others laugh. He nods when others nod. He bends his spine to survive, never realizing that the cost of that survival is the quiet burial of his own destiny. And what's worse, the powerless mock the powerful. They throw stones from below and label it virtue. They call ambition evil. They label discipline as toxic because its existence reminds them of the strength they refuse to cultivate. They romanticize weakness. They develop coping philosophies, religions that glorify suffering, ideologies that punish assent, politics that reward dependence. They pretend their resignation is morality. But morality without the underlying power to enforce it is nothing but theater. It is a costume worn by those too afraid to fight, too terrified to take responsibility. Their lives are governed by a constant, paralyzing cocktail of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of financial risk, fear of punishment. But the most crippling fear of all, the fear of responsibility. Because if they admit, even for a moment, that they are not powerless, they would have to act. And action is terrifying to a man who's built his entire miserable life on waiting, on hoping, on being used. The powerless man believes the system owes him something. He clutches to the childlike fantasy that fairness is a law of nature and that someone somewhere will eventually reward his endurance. He believes that suffering is currency, obedience is virtue, and hoping is a strategy. He is wrong on all counts. He is a vessel, a mule, a body to be placed in the machine. And once that body breaks, it is replaced without ceremony. No history books remember him. No monuments are built for his sacrifice. He lived quietly. He died quietly. And the world moved on without noticing. Now you, the listener, the viewer, the one who sought out this video, you need to ask yourself something. Not as a curious spectator, but as a potential escapee. Look at your life. Are you living reactively? Do you scroll, nod, agree, follow? Do you wait for someone, your boss, the news, a politician, to tell you what matters? Are you just hoping life gets better because you've suffered enough? Powerless men don't feel weak. They feel numb. They feel tired. They mistake exhaustion for hard work. They call busyness progress. But progress without power is just movement in a circle, like a horse on a carousel. Round and round, never forward. If you see yourself here, there is no shame in the recognition, only a warning. Because those who stay here don't just lose the game. They never realize a game was being played in the first place. Level 1 is not your prison. It's your invitation. The moment a powerless man becomes aware of his own powerlessness, he stands at a crossroads. Remain numb or awaken. If he chooses to awaken, he must embrace clarity. And clarity begins with pain. It is the sting of truth that burns away the fog of comfortable lies. Once you see the truth of your position, you can no longer unknow it. And the choice, in that instant, defines everything. The chains of routine, an introduction to the brilliant, subtle architecture of Level 1, and why most men never escape the daily grind of compliance. The awakening is brutal. It's not a motivational speech or a sudden epiphany. It's a cold dread. The moment you realize the comforting warmth you've been living in was the heat of a slow burn, and you are the fuel. This is the exit door from Level 1. Most men stand at that door, their hand shaking on the handle, and then they retreat back to the dull comfort of the known. The routine is a powerful sedative, and the powerless man is addicted to it. Let's dissect this architecture of compliance, this brilliant, subtle cage built entirely out of expectation and familiarity. The system doesn't need physical walls when it can control your time and your focus. That's the core mechanism of Level 1. Your life is not defined by what you achieve, but by the relentless, predictable cycling of obligations. Monday to Friday, rented labor. Saturday and Sunday. Think about it. The system doesn't care if you're productive. It cares that you are occupied. Busyness is the new chain. When you are constantly busy, you have no time for reflection. No time to ask the dangerous questions. Why am I doing this? Who benefits from my exhaustion? What if there is another way? The moment that silence arrives, the moment you are truly alone with your thoughts, the reality of your servitude screams at you. So the powerless man fills the silence with noise. The endless scroll, the constant news cycle, the addiction to outrage, the pursuit of fleeting, external validation. Anything to drown out the internal, nagging voice that whispers, "You're being used." This is the deeper, more horrifying layer of Level 1. It's not just external submission, it's internal surrender. The man at this level has been conditioned to fear the unknown more than he fears his current misery. He is terrified of the blank page. He needs a manual, a set of instructions, a clear line drawn for him to follow. Give him a promotion with a clear ladder, and he will work himself to death for it. Tell him to invent the ladder, and he will freeze. This fear of unstructured creation is the true hallmark of the powerless. They are magnificent at following. They are crippled by the need to lead themselves. And this is where Stoicism, the very philosophy we explore on this channel, offers a cold, hard intervention. The powerless man confuses external events with his internal state. A bad day at work, a political disappointment, a criticism from a peer. These are not just events. They become proof that life is unfair, that he is a victim, that he is justified in his exhaustion. He hands over the remote control of his emotional life to strangers, and then wonders why he feels so volatile. A Stoic, even at the lowest level, recognizes the single, terrifying freedom granted to every human, the freedom to choose your response. The powerless man sees suffering as an imposition. The awakening man sees it as a choice of perspective. The chain is not the 9 to 5. The chain is the belief that the 9 to 5 defines your worth. The Level 1 man waits for an external savior, a new job, a lottery win, a change in government, to grant him peace. The man who is leaving Level 1 realizes that sovereignty begins the moment you stop delegating your happiness. But here is the catch, the subtle twist that keeps the masses compliant. They are given just enough illusion of control to make them feel strong. They can choose their car color. They can choose their coffee order. They can passionately debate the merits of two identical political puppets. This is the safety valve. By focusing their limited energy on trivial, pre-approved choices, they exhaust their will to question the grand, non-negotiable architecture of their lives. They are allowed to scream about the furniture while never questioning who owns the house. The journey out of Level 1 is excruciating precisely because it requires you to betray your tribe. When you stop nodding, when you ask the dangerous question, when you start acting like an author and not an extra in your own life, the crowd will turn on you. They will call you selfish, arrogant, and disruptive. They do this not out of malice, but out of fear. Your freedom is a mirror that shows them their own gilded cage, and they will attack the mirror before they ever dare to try the lock. If you have truly awakened, if you feel the hollow, exhausting monotony of that life, then you are done with obedience. You are done waiting for instructions. You are ready to transcend the gray fog and seek the next, highly charged and fundamentally dangerous level. The man who breaks his invisible chains, who discovers strength, physical, financial, or social, but has not yet learned strategy, steps into the seductive glare of level 2. He is no longer asleep. But make no mistake, he is not yet free. He is merely stronger, and therefore, more valuable to the masters above. His name, the Enforcer. The golden handcuffs, exploring the seductive illusion of control in level 2, and the psychological torment of the Enforcer, who serves what he hates. You've broken through the fog. You've tasted the bitterness of clarity. You now realize that pure, unadulterated strength, muscle, wealth, charisma, is the currency of the next level. Welcome to level 2, the Enforcer. This is where most men who claw their way out of the masses first arrive, and tragically, this is often where they stop, mistaking a higher cage for the open sky. The Enforcer is seductive because it offers the illusion of dominance. He is the manager, the rising executive, the dedicated officer, the successful small business owner, the leader of the local movement. He wears the uniform, metaphorically or literally. He carries the badge, even if it's just the title on his office door. He gives commands. He manages people. He feels respected. He is depended upon. The pain of level 1, the facelessness, the interchangeability is gone. He is someone. But look deeper, and the terrifying truth emerges. His power is borrowed. He does not own it. He is merely allowed to wield it, so long as he obeys the structure above him. He is strong, yes, but he is leashed. Impressive, but ultimately replaceable. He is the strong arm of a mind he cannot see. When the order changes, he follows, even if it contradicts everything he once stood for, everything he privately believes. This is the source of his quiet torment. He is trusted to execute, but never to question. Because the moment the Enforcer thinks too deeply about the why, he becomes dangerous to the system he serves. Systems cannot function without the Enforcer. The higher powers depend on his loyalty, his predictability, and his willingness to suppress his own vision for the promise of status. He accepts the deal. In exchange for recognition, he sacrifices independence. He gets structure but loses vision. He gets authority but not authorship. He can control those beneath him, but he cannot control the purpose of his control. This is why you see so many leaders at this level, the middle managers, the foremen, the junior partners, living in a state of constant, low-grade anxiety. They build lives around routines of dominance, not truly to lead, but to feel powerful. They obsess over rules and punishments. They bark commands. They enforce policies they privately despise. But all of it, the posturing, the micromanagement, the need for obedience from subordinates, is a mask for the one truth they cannot bear to face. Someone else writes their orders. They cling to duty because duty provides a script. They are terrified of silence and reflection because in that quiet moment, they might hear their own doubts. They might realize how much they traded for that borrowed authority. They guard the gate, but they never dare to ask who built the gate or why it exists in the first place. They break the backs of others for the sake of rules they didn't write. The Enforcer is not necessarily weak, he's boxed. And that box is crafted so elegantly, decorated with awards, titles, and accolades, that most never try to leave it. They raise families inside it. They praise the box itself, calling it success or stability. But if you want real power, the kind that whispers and bends reality without shouting, level 2 is not where you stop. It is merely where you begin to see the strings. A man at level 1 is oblivious to the strings. The Enforcer, at level 2, sees them attached to the people beneath him. He pulls them, and they move. It gives him a rush. But the true agony of the Enforcer is that one day he glances up. He sees the strings attached to his arms. And he sees the movement in the shadows above him, the movement of the unseen hand. There is one crucial sign that the Enforcer is ready to evolve: disillusionment. It is that bitter, acid moment when the respect he worked so hard to earn finally feels hollow. When the awards, the promotions, the applause no longer silence the chilling question, is this it? When the uniform feels less like armor and more like a costume. That moment is sacred. Only a man who has tasted power but lost all respect for it can ascend to the next level. Only a man who has controlled others but realized he was still being controlled will have the courage to step out of line. And stepping out of line is not praised. It is condemned. The moment the enforcer questions the system, he becomes a threat. The very hands that applauded him now point in accusation. He is called disloyal, arrogant, dangerous. This is the great filter between level 2 and level 3. Most enforcers retreat. They suppress the questions. They silence their own minds. They protect their salary, their position, their rank, believing that comfort is worth the intellectual and moral compromise. But the few who endure the disillusionment, the few who choose the terrifying freedom of the unknown over the gilded safety of borrowed power, they are the ones ready to trade obedience for cunning. They are ready to step into the most volatile, treacherous realm of all. They will leave the light of the uniform and enter the shadows of influence. The art of the mask, a deep dive into level 3, where loyalty is a weapon and the schemer trades security for the intoxicating rush of covert influence. The man who questions the order but does not yet possess an order of his own steps into level 3, the schemer. This is the realm of pure, strategic self-interest, where raw obedience dies and something far more dangerous is born: calculated manipulation. This level is a dark, intricate dance of masks. The enforcer was strong but clumsy. The schemer is sharp, precise, and utterly ruthless in his objectivity. The schemer does not serve. He studies. He views people not as colleagues or friends, but as maps, a collection of vulnerabilities, ambitions, and loyalties that can be charted and exploited for leverage. At level 2, power was physical presence and authority. Here, power is information and silence. It is extracted drip by drip, through influence, persuasion, and design. The schemer listens more than he speaks, flatters more than he challenges, and watches every move not for meaning, but for its potential utility. He thrives in courts, in companies, in political movements, anywhere a rigid hierarchy exists, but the throne is not secure. He becomes the indispensable advisor to the CEO, the confidant to the general, the trusted favorite of kings. He is the whisper behind the decision, the one who plants the idea so subtly that the ruler believes it was his own genius. He redirects the blame, spreads the rumor, fabricates the enemy. He moves people without raising a hand, bending minds instead of breaking bodies. But despite all his cunning, the schemer remains exposed. Because to manipulate effectively, you must still be present in the room. You must still be seen, still be needed. His power depends entirely on the shadows. Influence only works when no one suspects it. The moment you are caught scheming, you are marked, labeled a viper, a backstabber, a threat to the stability you pretend to serve. The fatal danger of this level is not failure, it's success without foundation. The schemer is often the smartest man in the room, the most intellectually gifted, but he can never stop scanning that room for threats. He fears exposure above all else. He fears being out-schemed. Consequently, he trusts no one, because he sees too clearly how trust is manufactured and weaponized. He collects secrets like currency and favors like weapons. And so he spirals inward. He becomes addicted to the performance. He loses sight of who he was before the mask. A man who must always pretend eventually loses the ability to be genuine, even with himself. When this happens, even his victories taste like ash. He wins arguments but not peace. He gains allies but never true loyalty. He climbs the ladder, but he never knows if it will be violently pulled from beneath him tomorrow. His tragedy lies in a dark paradox. In gaining so much influence, he loses all security. His power exists only in tension. The moment he pauses, he becomes dispensable. The ruler begins to doubt him. The people begin to resent his invisible hand. He becomes the obvious, convenient scapegoat, because everyone knows he is clever, and cleverness, unguarded, provokes fear. In the end, many schemers die with a whisper in their name or a blade in their back. Still, some men love this level. They crave the intoxicating rush of proximity to greatness. They love playing both sides, controlling conversations, being essential in secret. But they are not truly chasing power. They are running from irrelevance. They cannot stomach the price of stepping into the light. They prefer to manipulate the king than to be the king, because the king is visible, and visibility makes you a target, a recipient of the inevitable blame. The schemer, for all his cold brilliance, is fundamentally still a coward hiding behind his intelligence. Yet, for those who seek the highest rungs, there is a narrow door out of level 3. It requires a final, excruciating sacrifice, not of your intelligence, but of your addiction to invisibility. It means stepping out of the shadows and asking the terrifying question, what if I stopped shaping the room and started owning it? What if I stopped advising kings and became one? This transformation demands that you risk being seen, blamed, challenged, and hated. It requires you to trade the perceived safety of covert influence for the terrifying, exposed sovereignty of command. Most schemers flinch. They prefer their cleverness to the crushing weight of responsibility. But the few who do not, the ones ready to trade the whisper for the decree, the influence for the declaration, they break through. They move beyond manipulation and step into the fire of level 4, the ruler. The lonely throne, the crushing emotional weight and constant paranoia of the ruler, at level 4, where visibility is both the prize and the fatal flaw. To cross from cunning manipulation to open command is to step into a crucible. The schemer hides behind influence. The ruler stands alone in the full, unforgiving glare of the world. This is level 4. The masks are burned. The whispers must become decrees. There is no more plausible deniability. The ruler must speak, must act, and must stand accountable for every consequence his voice unleashes. His power is no longer borrowed, or suggested, or insinuated. It is declared. And that declaration marks him for 3 things simultaneously: worship, envy, and swift, total destruction. The moment you wear the crown, the knives stop being hidden. They come smiling. They come applauding. They come dressed as loyal advisors, trusted colleagues, even lovers. And they wait for the moment you blink. The ruler has what the schemer craved, visibility. But he pays for it with what the schemer enjoyed, safety. Power at this level is not built on leverage. It is built on presence. His name becomes law. His face becomes the symbol. He is the state, the company, the movement. This is the gift of level 4, the ability to build openly, to reshape the world with a word. A ruler with vision can birth an era. A ruler without it can destroy one in a fit of ego. Yet this power comes with a crushing, emotional weight. A single wrong decision, a flicker of public doubt, a failed prediction, and the crowd turns. The crowd does not love the man. They love the idea of the man, the powerful symbol of order and destiny. The moment he disappoints that idea, he becomes a villain overnight. This is why rulers live with constant, justified paranoia. They see what others refuse to admit. Loyalty is temporary. Admiration is shallow. And the very people who lift you up will cheer as you fall, believing that their betrayal is virtuous. The ruler must harden. He cannot delay. He cannot hide. He cannot deflect. Every day his enemies, the schemers he thought he mastered, the enforcers he offended, the masses who resent his very existence, sharpen their narratives. They collect his failures like currency, because they understand the secret truth of level 4. The visible throne is not the true seat of power. It is the lightning rod. It draws all the destructive energy of the system toward itself, protecting the ultimate source that remains hidden. To survive, the ruler must master the darkest form of emotional detachment. He learns to smile while being betrayed. He learns to reward silence and punish unpredictability. He learns that genuine kindness is a liability, and any calculated act of mercy will inevitably be used against him. The part of him that once sought to be loved is buried, not out of bitterness, but out of necessity. He must be just, but never naive. He must inspire, but never depend. He must listen, but never need agreement. If he fails to master this terrible paradox, the need to be both a revered symbol and a calculating cynic, he becomes a puppet. He becomes a mere symbol, moved by the unseen hands of those who are truly in control. Most men only dream of this level. They crave the glory, the applause, the admiration. They fantasize about being seen and heard. But they are blind to the cost. They think they envy the king until they see how little peace he has, how every word is weighed for political consequence, how every alliance is a transactional calculation. They want the benefits of sovereignty without the excruciating burden of accountability. And in that desire, they reveal themselves as utterly unfit. Their ego still needs to be fed. But if you are already standing in this fire, if you know the taste of command and the weight of those commands, if you feel the profound loneliness of the top seat and have not yet been broken beneath it, then you are close. Closer than most humans ever get. You have transcended ego enough to take the blame, but you are not yet willing to shed your identity. The ruler is the last rung that can be seen. The final level is not visible. It does not wear a crown. It does not sit on the throne. It is invisible, and it is the force that bends the ruler, the schemer, and the enforcer all from behind a curtain no one even knows is there. It is not for those who seek praise. It is for those who seek permanence. The ghost in the system, the ultimate twist that reveals the true, chilling nature of the final level and the price of true, unaccountable power. You've seen the summit, the pinnacle of visible power. Now, let me reveal the grand deception. The biggest lie ever sold to mankind is the belief that the person giving the speech, the person signing the law, the person wearing the crown, is the person in charge. It is a brilliant, necessary illusion. The most powerful man in the world is never in the room. He does not raise his voice, yet men kill in his name. He does not appear in portraits, yet entire regimes bend to his favor. This is the truth the ruler cannot afford to say aloud, the one that keeps him awake in his fortified palace. Level 4 is merely a high-profile, highly protected, and ultimately expendable role. This is Level 5, the puppet master. He is not the king, he is the reason kings exist. His power is not seen, only profoundly felt. It lingers in the decisions others think they made freely. It ripples through the laws others believe they wrote. His genius lies in absolute disassociation, the art of control without ownership, authorship without signature, rule without any risk of exposure. The puppet master does not command directly. He engineers environments where people choose what he has already decided. He creates the political climate, he shapes the cultural narrative, he funds the rival ideologies. He sets the board so others fight for him, bleed for him, and ultimately clean up the mess for him. He doesn't need to fear rebellion because he manufactures it when necessary, to purge threats, to reset the system, or to remind a complacent ruler that their grip is rented and their time is running out. Think about the systems you obey every day. The flow of capital, the parameters of public debate, the very definition of what constitutes a good life. Who wrote the code for those systems? Not the politicians you vote for. Not the CEOs whose faces grace magazines. Those visible figures are just high-paid, disposable actors. The puppet master survives because no one can definitively prove he exists. His fingerprints are everywhere, but his identity remains vapor. If you try to expose him, you're labeled paranoid. If you manage to catch him, he already has a replacement, a younger, hungrier, cleaner proxy, ready to step into the void. That is the brilliance of true, fluid power. It does not cling to a single body. It flows. It reincarnates through systems, foundations, symbols, and proxies. He speaks through others. The CEO who pushes a sudden acquisition that decimates a rival. The cultural icon who subtly shifts the conversation with a single, perfectly timed comment. The academic who releases a study that justifies a sudden, drastic government policy. These are not coincidences. These are designs. The masses will debate the symptoms, the price of gas, the latest scandal, but they never trace the source because the source is too quiet, too smooth, too fundamentally embedded in the illusion of consensus. The tragedy of the schemer and the ruler is that they both crave recognition. The ruler wants to be remembered. The schemer wants credit for his cleverness. But the puppet master has endured one final death, the death of identity. He does not care for applause. In fact, he fears it. Recognition is a weakness. A name can be targeted, a role can be stripped. But a force, a myth, a silent legend behind the curtain, that is eternal. To reach this level, you must be willing to trade your name for legacy, your face for force, your fame for permanence. You cannot afford pride, only outcomes. You cannot afford self-image, only adaptability. You must be trusted by all but owned by none. That is why the puppet master endures. He would rather lose the credit and keep the control. He would rather be forgotten and still feared. He would rather rule in silence than reign in noise. Most men can't imagine this. Their fragile ego needs to be known. Their pride demands recognition. They want to be thanked, praised, feared, or at least acknowledged. And that's precisely why they remain vulnerable. They leave trails. They crave the feeling of power more than its results. The puppet master seeks the result only, believing that any display of ego is a trail leading straight to the target. If you have followed this dark path, from the faceless masses to the loyal enforcer, to the cunning manipulator, to the isolated king, and now find yourself staring into this abyss of absolute detachment, you must ask yourself the final, coldest question. Are you willing to vanish to win? Are you willing to be the ghost in the machine, shaping civilization while remaining invisible in its history? Because only those who endure this final, silent transformation become the architects. The invitation to vanish, a final, dark choice about the pursuit of level 5, the death of ego, and the call to join the few who build in silence. We stand at the edge of the final abyss, where the path of power merges with the path of self-annihilation. You have seen the 5 levels, the powerless, the enforcer, the schemer, the ruler, and finally the puppet master. Now you must choose what you truly want, not what your conditioned ego tells you to want. If you are still listening, if this journey through the cold mechanics of human control hasn't repelled you, it is because something inside you already knows the truth. You were never meant to stay powerless. Something in you has seen through the illusion and doesn't want to obey anymore. You've glimpsed what real power looks like. Not the loud, performative kind they sell you, but the kind that builds in silence. The kind that doesn't ask permission. The ultimate challenge of level 5 is not strategy, but temperament. It demands the total mastery of the ego. The ruler at level 4 still needs the love and fear of his people. He needs to be known. The puppet master needs nothing. His victory is secured not by his presence, but by his absence. He understands a core philosophical truth. All things that are visible are temporary. All things that are named are eventually judged and destroyed. Therefore, to achieve permanence, you must become invisible. Ask yourself, honestly, can you bear to have your greatest triumphs credited to a fool? Can you allow another man to stand on the stage and take the applause for the masterpiece you secretly orchestrated? Most cannot. Their pride, their desperate need for recognition, binds them to the lower levels. They would rather have a short, glorious reign as a visible ruler than a long, silent eternity as an invisible architect. The Stoic knows that the only thing you truly own is your judgment and your will. The powerless man surrenders both. The enforcer surrenders his judgment to his orders. The schemer surrenders his will to his need for leverage. The ruler surrenders his inner peace to the necessity of public performance. But the puppet master? He achieves a kind of chilling, perfect Stoic ideal, not by seeking virtue, but by embracing pure, detached causality. He is emotionally unbound. He understands that people are merely forces of nature, to be nudged, channeled, and leveraged. He has no emotional investment in the outcome, only in the execution of the design. When an ally betrays him, he feels no anger, only a detached observation of a predictable system failure. When a proxy is destroyed, he feels no grief, only the necessity of installing the next model. This is the price of total sovereignty, the death of the self as a human being. You become a force. You become a mechanism. You trade all the messy, warm, beautiful, and vulnerable emotions of humanity for the cold, absolute clarity of control. That is why this level is less about climbing and more about transcending. You do not reach level 5, you disappear into it. If you choose this path, be warned. You will be feared instead of praised. You will be misunderstood instead of liked. You will be alone in a way the ruler can only dream of. But you will finally be unshakable. You will trade the comfort of being understood for the power of being unassailable. You've made it this far because the seed of the architect is already within you. You are already willing to walk away from the crowd and stand in the painful clarity of truth. Now, I ask you one final time. Are you willing to let go of comfort, image, and the desperate, shallow need for approval for the sake of something permanent and unshakable? Are you ready to stop being in the system and start being the one who designs the system? If this message struck a chord, if it made you uncomfortable, if it forced you to see the invisible structure of your own life and the cost of the path ahead, then you are ready to stop talking and start building. Write in the comments right now so we can see how many are truly ready. I choose power in silence. Let's find out who is ready to disappear from the noise and rise anyway. Final summary. We have mapped the 5 brutal truths of power. You began as the powerless, level 1, chained by routine, mistaking obedience for wisdom, and finding safety in the anonymity of the crowd. You ascended to the enforcer, level 2, gaining authority but not sovereignty, trading your ambition for the gilded cage of borrowed strength. You evolved into the schemer, level 3, the puppet master's apprentice, mastering influence and information, but crippled by your own paranoia and fear of exposure. You stood on the summit as the ruler, level 4, achieving visible command but suffering the constant, paralyzing burden of accountability, realizing the crown is merely a high-profile target. The final truth, the grand deception, is level 5, the puppet master. He is the architect who operates in total silence, trading his name for permanence, his face for force, and his ego for absolute control. He is the ghost in the machine, proving that true, unassailable power requires the death of the self and the willingness to orchestrate the world without ever claiming credit. The entire journey is a paradox. The more desperately you chase the visible markers of power, the more vulnerable and expendable you become. Freedom and true power are found only in the surrender of the ego, the rejection of the crowd's applause, and the acceptance of cold, detached clarity. This is not just philosophy, it is a cold, hard manual for how the world is actually run. The path upward is lonely, unpraised, and fundamentally dangerous. But the view from the top, the ability to not just live in the world, but to author it, is the ultimate reward. Don't scroll past the next video. You're closer than you think. And what's coming next matters more than you know. I'll meet you there. If you are ready to continue this journey, the journey from the crowd to the architect, then you need the tools of the mind. Subscribe to the Stoic Philosophy channel now, and turn on notifications. Your education in true sovereignty has just begun.